What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Gooner channel. And well, it's finished at the Emirates. Arsenal 3, Southampton 3, top of the table versus bottom of the table, and we could only manage a draw for the third game running. Whispers and murmurs that began around Anfield about us possibly losing our nerve and got louder by the West Ham game. I think that question has been settled now. A good number of the players on that pitch today were quite clearly affected by nerves. And I can only imagine what it must feel like to chase down a title and be in the glare of the spotlight for as long as they have. And also to be chased down by a team like Manchester City, who don't look like they're going to falter at all. We still have 6 games to go. There are positives to take out of this. There's one huge positive that I want to take out of it, which I'll get to in a little bit. So it's not all doom and gloom from me. I know that many of you are not going to want to hear this because it's the wrong time, really, to talk about the process and how this is much further ahead than we thought we would be. But there is a very key part of a process that we have to go through before we can win the title. And I think we're a step closer to going through that tonight. And looking at the team, I think, we'll go through the players. Ramsdale, who's been outstanding for us all season, interviewed before the game, he was talking about how this is completely different pressure from the pressure he's felt in teams he's been relegated in. But I think his casual pass is just an aberration. Not just that, but his, the weak hand that he puts out to try and stop the ball flying past him. I think these were all kind of signs of him trying to be deliberately nonchalant and show that he wasn't fazed, when clearly, he's a young man with everything he dreamed of in his grasp, and he let it slip. I think with some players, you only truly appreciate them when they're not there. I would say that about Saliba right now. And I'm sure we can all agree you can say about Granit Xhaka. 2 of our most calm and composed players not on the pitch. And, well, there were sloppy passes. I'm going to share a couple of opinions which I have every reason to believe will be hugely controversial to you and that you will not want to agree with me on. And I'm happy to have that debate. Please do leave any comments below. But I think we're seeing the end of Thomas Partey. I think he's one of the players who, when he's not in the team, you see it makes a visible difference. But I don't think he's a big game player. I don't think he stands up and is counted for the big occasion. I think he goes missing. And I think that his nerves and his nervousness looks complacent, looks lackadaisical, looks like he doesn't care. I think he does, but I don't think he's processing that well. I think we needed him to be more assertive in the absence of Granit Xhaka. I think what Zinchenko's brought to the team is outstanding, and a good part of the reason why we are where we are is his influence in the midfield. But that huddle that he called after the second goal just didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right with me at all. And the kind of conversation he was having with Odegaard, it felt almost like we were giving Southampton a little bit of hope. I'm old school. I would rather he'd just gone and put his arm around 1 or 2 of the players and talked to them privately. This calling everyone together obviously hadn't been prearranged, and for a bit it looked like the players weren't all going to come, and in the end they did sort of all assemble, but you could see they didn't all want to be there. And I'm not sure what it is that he said to them or what he said to Odegaard afterwards, but it felt a little bit to me like it was for the benefit of the fans, and I don't think that you should be thinking like that. So Zinchenko, for all that he's brought us, he lives on his nerves a little bit, and I think we need calm and steadying personalities around him. And there is no getting away from the fact that, he was at fault for the third goal. But I'm not trying to rip players apart. I think they all gave the best they could in the situation. I don't think anyone was guilty of a lack of effort. If there was one player, I think, that was just way under the pace, Fabio Vieira. I did a video not long ago that said, we have to give him a year before we can really judge him. Pires was no different. He came into the Premier League and complained about how rough and tough it was and how off the pace he was. It took him time to adjust. the English Premier League is the fastest paced of all the leagues, and coming from Portugal to play here at this level is going to be a bit too much to ask, and that begs a question of Arteta. Smith Rowe was arguably one of our best players last season. He's apparently being groomed to play in that position after Xhaka, and yet tonight he couldn't get on the pitch at all. Something is not right there. I can't make the decisions for Arteta. I don't know what he's seeing and not seeing in training, but it felt an awful lot like that was a worrying sign for him. Jesus, I do think Jesus is a great player to have. I'm so glad we had him. But let's be frank. If Eddie Nketiah had missed the chances the way that Jesus did today, we would have no trouble at all in criticising him. I think he plays brilliantly with his back to goal. He brings players in. I'm always glad he's there, but it was really telling today, wasn't it? That the players who played without fear, that did have a go at it, that terrorised Southampton, that forced them to go to a back five, Saka and Martinelli. I really do think we could be looking at the two best wingers in the world. And Odegaard, as he came into the game, another one. But there were too many players around behind them that just did not have it in their legs to step up for this game. They were living on the nerves, and it showed. And in a way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I want to talk about the reality that people have been saying that if we don't win it this season, we're not going to win it again, because the only reason we're up there and in with a shout isn't, the games we've won, isn't the goals we've scored. It's the fact everyone else is rubbish. Well, I have trouble with that narrative anyway, but I think it's utterly misguided. I think that real champions are born out of failure, not success. Roger Federer is the greatest tennis player who ever lived. Roger Federer will tell you that his early career is part of the reason. His tantrums and meltdowns and the nerves that got to him that stopped him performing at the top level, he had to go through that stage. Champions are born out of failure, not out of success. Let me give you some statistics to back that up, if you will. In 2003, 2004, no prizes for guessing who won the Premier League. But who came second? Chelsea. And in that summer, they would have felt terrible. It's not a desire to win that makes a champion. It's the fear of ever experiencing that failure again, of ever coming second again. That's what drives real champions to give more than they ever thought they could and to focus in a way that nothing else will focus you. So the next year they win it, and then they go and win it again the year after, beating Man United into second place. Well, that Man United used that to fuel them to come first the year after, and they did it 3 times in a row until they lost to Chelsea again. And that year they came second to Chelsea, and it fueled them enough to come first the year after that. And then Man United had to give way to Man City, and sure enough, they came back the next season and won it again, beating City, who overtook them the year that followed. We all know that Liverpool were pipped to the post and came back and won it in the COVID year. But the team that they beat into second, they came back and they won it. It is an integral part of the process of becoming a champion, that you have to have it, feel it in your grasp and let it slip, because that will fuel you. Winners are not people who love to win. They are people who cannot bear to lose. And you can't be frightened of something you've never experienced. So, although you don't want to hear it, that we're in a process, this is an integral part of that process. If by some miracle we go on and we win the Premier League this season, might be the worst thing that could happen to us. Doesn't that seem like a silly thing to say? We need to reinforce in the summer. I think, in a dream world that I sometimes inhabit, Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice both sign. I don't think we need a massive overhaul this season. There are too many question marks outstanding for me to have any idea of whether Balogun's going to be playing with us. Certainly it seemed like it for a long time, and now it seems less like it. whether Eddie Nketiah is going to be here, who indeed is leaving. There were more than enough players like Pepe and who can leave. Maitland-Niles, for example, tonight wasn't able to play, but he's not coming back to Arsenal. There are roughly 7 players that we will think are leaving, and Mary is one of them. You know, if we'd had him tonight, still play Rob Holding. So we don't need a massive overhaul, but we do need to replace some of the players who aren't going to make it as champions, that aren't champions. And whether you agree with me or not, I would say that Thomas Partey is one of those. Rob Holding is one of those. But with a few sensible additions, we go again. Now look, I know it's all a bit premature talking about not winning the league. We've still got to go to the Etihad. And I do think we can win. I think it's ridiculous asking Mikel Arteta, as they did after the match, whether he thought we could go to the Etihad and win, because what else is he going to say? Can you imagine a world in which, when asked, Mikel Arteta says, "Oh, we've got no chance, mate. We couldn't beat Southampton at home." Do I feel great that we came back and won it? I think it's a sign, isn't it? When the bridges were burnt, there's nothing left to worry about. Then they just got on with it and scored. For all the shots and chances we had, we didn't look like scoring for most of the second half. I remember thinking to myself, it's the hope that kills you. It really is. It really is the hope that kills you. Tonight's result is arguably the worst result it could have possibly been. Had we lost, then I think we could all just make our peace with the fact that we're not going to win the league. I've heard all kinds of people saying, it doesn't change the result. One point it does change the result. Definitively changes the result. It means we have to win at the Etihad as opposed to just needing a draw, which is a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, if we've shown one thing in the last 3 games, it's that winning is not necessarily something we're going to do easily. And if we do go to the Etihad and beat them, let's say comfortably, I still don't feel that confident that we're going to take Chelsea apart at home, or to travel to Newcastle and get a result up there. And that's before you get to Brighton. Look, I love this team and I love what they've done. I hoped, I believed, I still believe. It's my job to believe. I'm an Arsenal fan. It ain't over till it's over. I still believe, and I will be watching on Wednesday from behind the sofa through my hands again, hoping that we don't concede a stupid early goal or, go 2-0 up and throw it away or any of these things. I want it to be a great game. Because even though I hated today's result for what it meant, and I'd much rather we did score a 4th goal and win it at death, and there'd be a much more joyous experience, we did and we can celebrate St Totteringham's Day, which it may be a little bit too soon to all run around celebrating that, but it's a while since we had one, so I am going to enjoy it. And we are 1 point away from European qualification or qualification for the Champions League. These are all positives. But we carry on in the Premier League in a race to the title, and above all this season has been reinvigorating. Because it's been far too long. I mean, it really has been far too long. It'll be 2 decades since we last won the title if we don't win it this season. And I'd forgotten how exciting these nights are. I'd forgotten how exhilarating these nights are. And remember, it's only us and Man City that have that at the moment. All the other teams in the Premier League are either, scrapping to get a European place we've already got, or desperately trying to stay in a league. We have every reason to be really proud. I am sure that this team under Arteta will win the league, if not this season, then next season. And I feel that when they win it next season, they have a much better chance of holding on to it. I think we are the emerging force in English football. Ten Hag's rebuilding of Manchester United is going to take a little longer on the evidence of their game against Sevilla. I look forward to the FA Cup semi-finals to see where they really are. I think Manchester City have shown fatigue. There's going to be players leaving City, and Pep Guardiola may be leaving City if they do go on and beat Real Madrid in the semis and one of the Milan teams in the final. Chelsea, whoever they bring in, whoever wants that job, He's not just going to click his fingers and turn them into a Premier League winning side. And Jurgen Klopp has a huge rebuilding to do at Liverpool. So if it isn't us next year, who do you think it's going to be? Anyway, the key thing I want to say here is reiterate is that for players who become the world's greatest, they do it by going through the pain of near misses, all of them. Now, we can count ourselves close to that as well. I'm not cheering a 3-3. I'm not delighted about it. I am gutted because it really doesn't get us any closer to where we wanted to be. But maybe it was just a bit too soon. I still trust in the process. I think we have one of the world's brightest, youngest managers, but he hasn't been error-free, and tonight was an example of that. I think there were a couple of different things he could have done. There were, and if you're talking about nerves in a team, that comes through from the manager. It's one of his jobs is to keep them calm, the way George Graham would have done, the way that Arsene Wenger managed to do, the way that Arteta will do, but perhaps didn't do just yet. Anyway, that's enough from me, and I look forward to hearing all of you disagree with me, or some of you disagree with me. And also, let me know how you're going to celebrate St. Tottering's weekend. That's enough from me. Lots of love.